Welcome to Ground Game with your Cabarrus County Republican Party. I am Abdul Ali, and for my man G to the Mills behind the camera, thank you for checking us out. Make sure you hop on Facebook, check out our previous episodes. Last week, we were joined by Sarah Newby to talk about our state Supreme Court elections, and our local judge, Nate Knus, dropped by to kick it with us about what he does as a local judge, and we want to thank them very much for doing that. Also, make sure you visit your Cabarrus County Republican Party website, get signed up for the newsletter so that you can stay in the know about what's happening here in Cabarrus County. Today, we are going to be joined by our Cabarrus County School Board Chairman, Rob Walter. We're going to be joined by your Republican Party Chairman, Scott Elliott, and then Laura Blackwell from our Cabarrus County School Board is going to drop by and kick it with us a little bit too. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and get you your municipal calendar so you know what's coming up here in Cabarrus County. This is your Cabarrus County calendar. Monday, September 14th is going to be a busy day in Cabarrus County with your Kannapolis City Council, Mount Pleasant Town Council, and Cabarrus County School Board all meeting at 6 p.m. On September 21st, your Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners will meet at 6:30 p.m. And on Monday, September the 28th at 6 p.m., Kannapolis City Council meets once again. This is your calendar for Cabarrus County. Welcome back to Ground Game with your Cabarrus County Republican Party. As always, I am Abdul Ali. And as you know, what we try to do here is be a resource for our community. So from time to time, we are going to bring on elected officials to talk about the issues that are important to you, the people who live right here in Cabarrus County. Today on Ground Game, as promised, I am joined by one of your Cabarrus County Board of Education School Board members, Mr. Rob Walter. Welcome to Ground Game, brother. How you doing?
Good.
Good deal. So listen, there's a lot going on in Cabarrus County.
There is.
I know you guys had a meeting last night. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. But one of the issues that's always at the forefront of people's minds is building schools, redistricting, and all those kind of things. So if you don't mind, give the folks an update, a little input on where we are as far as redistricting and building schools and the need for that growth and infrastructure for Cabarrus County schools.
Well, Cabarrus County has experienced essentially a ton of growth over the last couple of years, where we've overwhelmed our schools. We've been at 120, 130% capacity at some of our schools. We've built an elementary school and a high school that just opened up this year. That relieves some from the high school and the elementary school overcrowding. But we've also got an issue with the middle schools. So we're right now in the process of building a middle school somewhere close to J.M. Robinson High School. So centrally located. We went through a redistricting 2 years ago that involved well over 3,000 students. This will not be as big, but it will involve not just the J.M. Robinson area. It'll involve Harris Road. It'll involve Hickory Ridge. It'll involve all the middle schools in that area, from J.M. Fries to C.C. Griffin to Winkler. So all those will be involved in the next redistricting. That process will be starting next month. The school board, again, is using a consultant. So they'll bring in the consultant again who will do all the demographic research that they tend to do, create some maps for us. It's available for the public on the website. There will be an internal committee of, admin and principals and teachers to, go up with a couple draft plans for what the redistricting might look like. From there, they'll go out to the public. So there'll be another committee of parents and community members to go through that redistricting, to evaluate the different alternatives, again, provide feedback to the consultant. And ultimately, hopefully about 7 months, they'll come up with a recommendation of what those new lines will look like when that school opens. And again, that's for 2 years in the future. So we're not making the decision and moving it in 6 months. You'll have a year, more than a year, to prepare for that like we did for the high school.
One of the things I picked out of that, Rob, is that it sounds like you guys really valued the input from parents and from the people you represent, the kids, parents, and how important to you is that feedback from the public? How much does that really weigh into what you guys on the school board do?
Well, it's one of the reasons I actually ran for school board is to get the parent input. I didn't think it was fair to make these decisions in house and propose it on one week and then vote on it the next. So we've slowed that process down. We have gotten parents involved. The consultant here uses that committee of, probably 30 people that were involved last time. I don't know the size it'll be this time, but that's important. And even if you're not on the committee, you have an opportunity to present to the board. We'll have a public hearing. We'll have probably more than one public hearing. And you'll have an opportunity to present there as well. We had over 50 people come talk to us, and that makes a difference because those those folks live in those areas. We don't most of the time. So we get that perspective. And I think that helps me for making a decision or making the ultimate, we vote for the ultimate plan.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from Brother Rob Walter here himself that you need to be providing input. You need to be reaching out to your school board members and letting them know what you want, because again, you directly elect these folks to represent you on the school board. Now, we're going to pivot a little bit into a little bit of a different topic here. As we all know, COVID. We got to talk about COVID. You guys had a meeting last night. Some might say a little contentious, maybe not. But what would you want folks to know about how we plan on moving from one phase or one plan to the next? And what information could you give to the people watching Ground Game about your decision or what's going to be happening going forward?
Okay, the board voted back in July to move to Plan C, and that was based on the health department and the superintendent and the group that they have there saying that the COVID cases in this area were, I guess, elevated. So we evaluate, and part of our resolution that we pass is every 2 weeks we'll look at those numbers. And the resolution, as it says, is COVID cases have to be declining for a period of 14 days. That has not happened yet. We did have a meeting yesterday. We again got an update on what the COVID numbers look like, although some of them are improving, especially the hospitalizations. The numbers apparently are still too high. They aren't declining, they're steady. So the recommendation from the superintendent was not to move forward with a Plan B, which Plan B is having students in school some of the time. In our case, it's 1 day a week. In other school districts, it could be different, it could be 2 or more. But for our Plan B was 1 day a week, and then online, 2 days direct, 1-to-1 live instruction, and 2 or 3 days with asynchronous or you work on your own process. So yesterday we didn't move forward. We're still in Plan C. We'll evaluate that again in 2 weeks. If those numbers do decline, we'll work on transitioning into a Plan C and hopefully into a Plan A where everybody gets to come back to school. So again, for the most part, continue to follow the directions. Hopefully the numbers will continue to go down and we'll get our kids back in school, which I'd like to see.
Well, look, I don't envy you guys having to make these tough decisions, but I know I can speak for everybody that we appreciate you guys willing to put yourselves in the line of fire for this stuff. And at least I know for the folks on the Cabarrus County Republican Party, we appreciate all the work you guys are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Walter on your Cabarrus County School Board. We'll be right back on Ground Game.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Ground Game with your Cabarrus County GOP. I am Abdul Ali. And ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by a very special guest, a guy that usually says he has a face for radio, but he decided to join us on today's Ground Game, talk about some very important things. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, this is your Cabarrus County Republican Party Chairman, Scott Elliott. Brother Scott, welcome to the Ground Game, brother.
Thank you, Abdul. First off, I appreciate you doing this, you and Greg Mills. This Ground Game segment is fantastic. It's really great getting some of this information out to voters. This COVID environment we're in, we were having to do all we can to communicate with voters, and this is a great way of doing it. So I appreciate all the effort and time you guys have put into this, and it's a great segment.
Thank you, sir. Now, we couldn't do this, obviously, without your support and the support of our Vice Chairwoman, Anita Brown, and our entire executive committee. So I know I can speak for you in this regard and thanking them for all their help and support. Now, ladies and gentlemen, some of you guys may know Scott and may know what the Republican Party does, but we here at Ground Game thought it would be important for our chairman to give you guys a little input. So, Scott, you want to tell the folks a little bit about what we do as a county party and what our role is, and kind of give them some backdrop as to what we got going on here.
Yeah, great question, Abdul. The Cabarrus County GOP is set up based on a plan of organization. Plan of organization is very similar to bylaws for your typical nonprofit or corporation. That plan of organization governs what we do. One of the main functions of that plan, and in turn our role, is to get quality Republicans elected. That is one of the main things we do. A lot of ways of doing that, communication, fundraising, endorsements, those type things. But that's one of our main roles at the party, at the county level. Cabarrus County GOP is set up just like other counties throughout the state The county plan of organization is actually a subset of the state plan of organization and follows many of the same rules in that state plan of organization.
So you mentioned fundraising in there, and I know as a chairman, that's an important role, a part of what you do. Talk a little bit about the importance of fundraising, if you don't mind, because that's a huge side of what we got to have happening here.
It is. That's probably one of our main functions. Again, don't want to talk too much about the COVID situation, but it's clearly derailed some of our typical fundraising activities. We've got a lot of good things going. We've done pretty well with fundraising. For those of you that don't know, we have office hours here at McGill Avenue at our county Republican headquarters. We have merchandise for sale, Trump signs, Trump merchandise, and that's been our main fundraiser. But also we rely on individual contributions. As you guys have heard me say before, no contribution is too big and no contribution is too small. So we appreciate anything that you can do. We do have quite a bit of cost, particularly on the bigger elections, the presidential elections, with publishing voter guides, handout cards at the voting polling places. So we do actually have quite a bit of expenses that we have to raise money for on an annual basis.
So one of the things, and I know at least in the years that I've been involved with the party, is we really support, do our best to support local candidates. And to me anyway, these local elections are some of the most important. Like, we put a lot of energy into the President Trump and the damn farce, but you know, the local stuff is where your fire, water, sewer, police, schools, you know, all that stuff happens. And speaking of schools, we've made some endorsements this year for school board race. I know there's a huge amount of people on the ballot this year, but I think it's important for transparency's sake that you talk a little bit about how we arrived at that endorsement and what that process was like.
Sure thing. First, let me step back just one step. You know, we've all heard that saying that all elections are local. And they really are. These local elections probably have more effect or can affect your daily lives more than probably anything else. On this ballot, that includes the county commission, the school board, and on the backside of the ballot, the judges' races. Right. We have information we put out and continue to do that on the conservative judges. Don't want to go off on a tangent of that, but again, it really is important that the voters are informed and know who the Republican candidates and conservative candidates are on the ballot, and we'll continue to try to get that information out. Speaking of the school board, right. This year you'll see on the ballot there is 11 candidates, and despite efforts from the state GOP and the county GOPs, party affiliation is not on that ballot. Of those 11 candidates, 6 are Republicans. There are 4 seats available. So again, part of our job is getting quality Republicans elected. And to do that through several discussions and voting and all that, we decided that we would endorse 4 Republican candidates for those 4 seats. Mm-hmm. Important to talk about the process we went through to do that. The process was we sought input from several different sectors of the community to put together a questionnaire. We sent out the questionnaire to the candidates, received that information back, and then we conducted in-person interviews of those candidates. And then we took, the executive committee took a vote after that was over, and we came up with our 4 endorsed candidates.
So it sounds like to me, we tried to make this as fair of a process as we possibly could. And we felt, you know, at least as a county party, we feel like our role in getting the best 4 candidates up there to represent Republicans is what we've done.
Absolutely. Part of that is we developed a process. We informed the candidates what the process was, and we followed that process, and the results were the results.
Fair enough. I think, folks, if you don't know who these people are that are running for school board, please go online, get their names and information. You can contact us here at the County Republican Party. We have all the information on all of the candidates.
We have the signs for the candidates.
All the stuff that you need. So one last thing while we've got you here, Scott, and I know people are talking about the decisions with the school board and things of that nature. how important is it for folks at home, whether they're unaffiliated or whether they're registered Republicans that don't care to vote, how important is it, do you think, for folks to really flip that ballot around and pay attention to these down ballot and local races?
We've heard the talking heads of both sides of the aisle talk about this being the most important election ever. It may very well be, but again, these local elections truly affect our day-to-day lives. And part of that is the school board. Cabarrus County continues to grow. It's the second or third fastest growing county in the state. That continues to cause issues, and having a school board that's capable of dealing with those issues is extremely important, and having candidates that will manage that process correctly is really important.
So you heard it from the chairman himself, ladies and gentlemen. You got to get involved. You got to get engaged. You got to go show up and vote. If you do need information on how to go apply for your absentee ballot or where you need to go vote at, your Republican Party is a resource. We've got a chairman and a vice chairwoman and an executive board that's hard at work for you. We're going to have your chairman back on Ground Game at some point in the very near future. But Scott, thanks for jumping in and hopping in and informing the folks. We'll be right back on Ground Game.
Thank you.
I'm Catherine Truitt, and I am the Republican nominee for Superintendent of Public Instruction. Right now, we have a very large achievement gap in North Carolina between students of color and their white counterparts, and also between low-income students and their wealthier counterparts. This achievement gap translates into a loss of education after high school for a large number of people. Consequently, 49% of North Carolinians between the ages of 25 and 44 do not have training and education beyond high school. They do not have a credential of marketplace value. And that has a negative impact on our economy. I would say to let local districts decide what their reopening plan should be. If they themselves choose to do 100% remote learning, that's fine, but it should be up to the local district and their leadership to decide what is best. We need to rely on data, facts and figures, and should not be pressured by teachers' unions. My opponent has been in the classroom her entire career, first as a teacher and now as a professor. While it's important to have been in the classroom, and I myself was a teacher for 13 years, this role also requires someone who understands that, first of all, K-12 education does not sit in a vacuum. We must look at K-12 and how we need to reform it in terms of what is needed in our economy. What does the future state of workforce look like? I have that experience. We also need someone who has positive relationships at the legislature. My opponent has actually spoken out against the legislature and said that she refuses to work with the legislature. I would also say that my opponent is the teachers union choice and therefore has aligned herself politically with them and the governor already. So those are just a few of the differences between us. She is the more extreme candidate, and we do not need an extreme candidate to win this election.
Welcome back to Ground Game with your Cabarrus County Republican Party. I am Abdul Ali, and with me, I have a very good friend of mine, and actually, you're one of the first people that came up to me and was very friendly at my first Republican Party meeting. But this is Laura Blackwell, who works and represents you on your Cabarrus County School Board. How are you doing, young lady?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm
honored to be here.
I'm glad you can swing on by. We know you guys had a board meeting last night. We're going to talk about that in a second.
Okay.
But more importantly, we want to do this so that the voters in Cabarrus County have an idea of who their Republican representatives are and what Republicans stand for. And I remember when you were running for school board, I came up to you and I asked you about the disproportionate minority suspension rates and a lot of the issues that were facing African Americans in the district. And you had a very interesting take on that stuff, which was a refreshing take, which was the Republican Party is about choice and about freedom and about giving people a hand up. So what do you think about all of the stuff you hear about Republicans not wanting Black people to succeed and all this kind of thing. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, Adul, I really, I ran for school board for a number of reasons, and I'm a very proud Republican, and happy to represent my party on the school board. I think, one of the biggest misconceptions is that Republicans are the ones who are trying to hold people down. And I feel like we are the ones who are trying so desperately to give families, give children as much choice as they can have in order to be successful. And, one of those things is the fact that they have those choices to be able to do what is right for them. So whether it be that they go to private school, whether it be that they homeschool their children, whether it be that they go to public school and thrive there, which is fantastic because my children thrive there, and I wouldn't have them anywhere else. But again, it's back to that choice that we offer those parents, because bottom line is, I mean, you're a parent, and I'm a parent, and I think parents are the ones who know their children's best. And so who am I to tell you where your child should go and get educated? You know them, you know what they need. And so I think just, one of the things that Republicans work so hard for is providing that freedom for parents to be able to choose what they need for their children to be successful. So.
Well, if you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, because when you hear the word school choice, and we were talking about this off air, a lot of people, when they hear the term school choice, they think anti-public school. And I think you hit on a couple of really important points there, especially that there are options. So what are some of the options that parents have outside of just regular plain old public school here in Cabarrus County?
You're totally right. So again, I mean, me being pro-choice in the school arena is definitely not meaning that I am anti-public school. Obviously, I wouldn't have run for a school board seat to support our public schools. I love our public schools. In fact, I'll be the first to tell you, I think Cabarrus County has probably one of the best school systems in North Carolina. And I think we have fantastic administration, amazing teachers, and they haven't proven that. If they hadn't proven that before, they've certainly proven that during this pandemic. So it really just comes down to, we have the option for children have, private school, if that's something that that the parents can do for them. And I know that there's a voucher system out there for parents that can't afford those for their children. Homeschool, if some parents, of course, right now, it feels like everybody's a homeschool teacher.
That's a fact.
But homeschool, if that's an option that they have for their children. And then, we've got the charter schools out there and of course our wonderful public school system. And so these are options that parents have for their kids. And I certainly want to make sure that I fight for those options. Again, it's not about me telling you what's best for your kid to be educated. It's about me fighting to give you the right for you to decide that for yourself.
So what is if you had one big misconception, what's the one big misconception you get when people talk about charter schools? What's the one thing you hear, and that's just patently false? What do you hear a lot about charter?
So, one of the things, and I don't know a whole lot about charter schools. I have asked some questions to some people who have taken their children to charter school, and that it takes away money from the children in the public school system. I have not seen that to be the case at all. That's nothing that anyone has ever shown me or proven to me when I've asked for that information, that money has now been taken away from the public school system. So I think that's a big misconception. And also too, for charter schools, and this is just a couple of the things that I do know about charter schools, is that you have to volunteer. Like parents have to have a certain amount of volunteer time that they have to do at the charter school as well. So there's certain criteria that parents also have to meet in order to send their children to charter school. So that is a certified fact.
I hear that all the time. People say, well, you're taking money away from the public schools. And I'm like, no, because charter schools don't get the transportation budget. budget.
They don't
we don't
have
get
it.
the
Yeah.
security
No,
budget.
they don't have
We don't get the
buses.
building and maintenance budget.
No, they do
All
not.
we get is that per pupil spending that would leave the school if the kid
Well,
went to another school anyway.
Right. And so that is what the parents have to volunteer for in a lot of cases because they don't have the same resources that we have in the public school system. So,
Absolute fact. Now, we talk about choice, and I know one of the big contentious things in Cabarrus County right now is our choice about how our kids are going to return back to school. If King Cooper would have some decency and have some sort of leadership strategy, we should plug a Dan Forest pop-up somewhere, right?
Can we do that?
We can pop like a Dan Forest, like every time we say King Cooper and then pop up Dan Forest. But talk a little bit about what that choice means to you in relation to the COVID response and what that means for us here in Cabarrus County.
So yeah, we did. So to your point, we had a school board meeting last night. It was a long one, I think about 6 hours long. This is something we've talked a lot about. We do have our hands tied at this point. Like you said, Governor Cooper has decided that we can't go any further than Plan B. We do have the choice to decide what that Plan B looks like. And so even though that there was a Plan B that was rolled out for Cabarrus County prior to us even deciding on Plan C, those things can be totally tweaked just because it says that in that Plan B that, we're going to have a group of kids that go Tuesday and one group that goes Wednesday, one group that goes Thursday. Any of that can be changed at any time. This is not set in stone. And I think that that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about as a school board is, what do we want Plan B to look like? Because honestly, if it was up to me, I would push immediately to Plan A and get these kids back in school.
Right.
So it's really trying to figure out, we all understand, and I think teachers and parents do, that all of this seems like a logistical nightmare. We realized that, with the virtual in the spring, we were kind of cast into that without much ability to plan for that. The teachers didn't have any training on that. The kids didn't. Parents still don't. I think we're kind of learning as we go with all of this as well. But I do think that Plan C for the fall has gone a lot better than I expected. And I think a lot better than a lot of other parents expected too, because we saw the struggles that the kids had in the spring. And, with the spring session, one of the things that I definitely didn't tell my kids was that where you left off, you couldn't go any worse than that. Right. So, they didn't realize that. And of course I didn't want them to know that. I wanted them to still continue on, learning as much as they could and making sure that they got on their classes and that kind of thing. But we definitely wanted to make sure that with the fall and this year that, kids were being held accountable for attendance and kids were being, making sure that they were learning and being tested on these things that they're supposed to be being educated on. But it's so difficult for some. And we talk about disparities and, all of these things. And as a public school system and as a school board member, my job, and it's in our mission statement, is to keep kids first. Kids come first, right? So are we putting the kids first? This is my question to myself when we have these meetings and we talk about what we're doing with the plans is, are we putting the kids' needs first above our own?
That is a very important point that Laura brings up, putting our children first. And I know you do, just like the other folks on our school board. So ladies and gentlemen, make sure you're aware and engaged about who's serving on your school board. Now, complete sidebar segue, nothing to do with what we were talking about. I am going to give you one name or word, and you've got to give me a one-word response. You only get one word. Ready?
Okay.
First name I'm going to give you is Hillary Clinton.
Corrupt.
Okay, corrupt.
Yes.
I'm going to give you Kamala Harris.
Dirty.
I bet you Willie Brown would agree. Last name I'm going to give you is Melania Trump.
Graceful.
Graceful does it. All right, last question for you.
Okay.
AC/DC or Metallica?
Oh, hands down, AC/DC. No question.
AC/DC? I'm a Metallica guy. I'm
No,
going
no,
with
no.
Ride the Lightning. That's what I'm rocking.
Back in Black. Come on.
Back in Black. We got it. You
Durr, durr.
Yeah. You got it. Welcome back to Ground Game. I am Abdul Ali. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you tune in next week when we are going to be joined by Jennifer Dunbar and Brenda Brown from the Dan Forest campaign, Run Forest Run. Looking forward to having that conversation. So make sure if you're not following us on Facebook and you're not getting the county newsletter that you do that so that you can stay in the know. And speaking of staying in the know, as promised, we are going to let you know who is actually your endorsed Republican school board candidate. So without further ado, drum roll, please. First and foremost, your current school board chairman, Rob Walter, has received a Republican Party endorsement. Secondly, Denise Adcock, many of you know, very active in the Cabarrus County community. So congratulations to her. Third, we have Mr. Tim Furr, who, as many of our friends know, has served on the school board before, and we look forward to having his experience back on school board. I know we could use it. And last but certainly not least, our good friend Frederick Preach Murray, who actually serves as a substitute in Cabarrus County School. So have a little educator's perspective on there. But ladies and gentlemen, these are your Republican Party endorsed school board candidates. If you need information on these candidates, signs, or anything else, or any other candidates, please feel free to drop by your office. We are at 96 McGill Avenue here in Concord, Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you need anything, make sure you reach out to us at the email on your screen, sign up for the newsletter, follow us here on Facebook, share the page with a friend. Once again, for your Republican Party, I am Abdul Ali, and you've been checking out Ground Game.